Hey there, hope you're doing really well today, and welcome to Ask Daniel number 40, in which we have, I think, 3 emails, a comment, and 1 question from Instagram as well that we're going to go over. As always, nothing here is medical advice, just general thoughts and comments that I hope will be helpful to anyone tuning in. So with that said, let's jump right in, and actually, let's start with this comment from 1 day ago. This is from I'm just going to say ZBZI from Ask Daniel number 39. And you will see actually in this episode that this comment has a lot of similarities with a question from Alex, as well as a question from Firas. So I think for Firas, Alex, and ZBZI, I hope you will get a lot of value from listening to the similar questions. So with that said, this is a comment on Ask Daniel number 39. Hi Daniel, do you have any special advice for us insomniacs in times of pandemic? I could really use some tips and tricks. I've been using CBTI since late December, and by the beginning of March, I was pretty much sleeping normal. Then came the pandemic and some serious health issues with 2 family members, and my insomnia came back with a vengeance, especially the hypnic jerks. As soon as I lie down in my bed, my body gets all jittery and I become very aware of it. I tried progressive muscle relaxation, but it didn't help. It's clearly psychological because as soon as I leave my bedroom and sit on the sofa in the living room listening to radio or ASMR, I fall asleep. That is, as long as I don't bring my blanket or anything that is associated with the bedroom with me. I tried listening to radio in my bed, but it doesn't help with the hypnic jerks. My current sleep window is 11 or 11:30 until 6 a.m. Should I shorten it even more? I'd appreciate any advice. I realize that it's normal to experience insomnia while anxious, but since this pandemic might be here for months, I wonder what I should do to get better sleep anyway. So first of all, thanks for reaching out, Z, and I want to say, as always, it's so important to try to really focus on positives. Always good to highlight them. And that is, by the beginning of March, I was pretty much sleeping normal. That's fantastic. That is, and I know you know this, but still, that is that evidence that there's nothing wrong with you, nothing wrong with your sleep system. You can sleep. And as you know, you said, I know it's all psychologically. That's really, really important too. You know that it is, anxiety, stress, worry, etc., that is causing you to not sleep well. So that is, it's good that we know your sleep system is good. We know that we know what the trigger is, and that is, that already there gives you foundation to work on. Now, I want to say, where should we start? Let's actually go kind of like line by line here and pick up on some things, and for everyone out there, I hope it is super clear to you that all I do here is to help people sleep better. I'm not trying to, belittle anyone's problems or split hairs or anything like that. But I think all these things I'm going to talk about, I think is all important. And one of them is like, do you have any special advice for us insomniacs? I use that word sometimes too, but there's a little bit of a problem with it, which is like, when someone calls themselves an insomniac, it's almost like, you're labeling yourself, you're taking on an identity. You think of yourself as someone who belong to a group of people who have trouble sleeping, and that thinking of yourself as an insomniac, I think, is not helpful. I think that naturally that can happen, but just to keep in mind that when you even just saying it, I'm an insomniac, or us insomniacs, that are all that becomes kind of an affirmation. It affirms that you have trouble sleeping, and I think it does. That's one of those times when affirmations are when you affirm something negative, it also works. Affirmations work when you say something, state something you believe in. It makes it feel more real. So when you say like, I'm an insomniac, us insomniac, etc., it can affirm something that you don't want to affirm. So that's kind of one little thing. And then I could really use some tips and tricks. Obviously, when you have a problem, when there's an issue, you want to solve it. The big thing here is, and in a way, it's like this entire channel is, in a way, all, like, if you boil it down to one thing, if you boil all I'm talking about down to like this one thing, it is sleep is passive. It is passive. It cannot be produced, or, there's nothing you can do to make yourself sleep. And when you try to make yourself sleep, it backfires. So all the tips and tricks are really weirdly about like doing less, So what I want to point out there is that, you're often looking for like this thing that will help, this thing that can make me sleep better. That pursuit, kind of looking for something that will make you sleep, is not helpful, because ultimately the only thing that can produce sleep is if you're sleepy enough and you're not worried at all, you'll sleep good. But as whenever you try to do something that's impossible, like if you would go out and try to change the weather, you would just end up frustrated. And the same thing, like if you're looking for something like a trick or tip in terms of like something that will make you sleep, and maybe that's not at all what you're saying here, Z, but I think that's important for everyone to hear, that the trick is to stop looking for the trick, if you will. The best tip is like, don't look for a sleep producing tip or something of that nature. I thought that was just important to point out. Now, other than that, like the big picture here is like a familiar one, and actually the one that we'll see 2 more times in this episode, which is someone who's starting to use the techniques I always talk about, the insights, CBTI. By the way, I'm more and more thinking of, there are some problems with CBTI, which we'll talk more about, but still, CBTI is still, for the most part, really, really good. And so again, big picture here is like we have somebody who started CBTI, did better, and then has a setback. That's kind of the story here. And when that happens, I always think that that whoever did the CBTI would kind of like didn't do a good enough job of like educating this client, because if they did, the likelihood of insomnia coming back would be very low, because that person would completely understand that it is when we try to make ourselves sleep, it's when we try to make ourselves less anxious that we have more trouble sleeping. So with that kind of in mind, I want to get more practical here and say, and I know you kind of already know this, but I think this is, again, so important to highlight, and that is when something happens, like COVID is happening now, when you have health issues in your family, it is completely normal and expected that you sleep less. That is completely normal and expected. In fact, if somebody says, my aunt and my, brother-in-law both were diagnosed with, COPD this week, and I sleep fantastic and I sleep great, then I would be like, that's odd, that's unusual, that should not happen. It's completely normal to have that, let's call it acute insomnia, trouble sleeping for a while, but it really becomes problematic when we identify it as an issue, when we start being like, I can't sleep, what am I going to do? I have to try this thing, I have to try this other thing. So as long as one can, when somebody has gone through CBTI, for example, and they're sleeping better, and they realize that the reason they got into the hole they got into from the beginning was because they reacted to insomnia, then you really, if you fully understood that, you can get to a place where whenever you have trouble sleeping, then you don't react to it, and it doesn't become more than a stretch of little sleep. So that's a super important one. And when we see here, like, what was it here? As soon as I lie down in bed, my body gets all jittery and I become aware of it. I tried progressive muscle relaxation, but it didn't help. Again, I'm sorry to be harping upon this, but I think it's so important. Like, when you do anything with the intent and purpose of becoming less hyper-aroused, when you do anything to have less hypnic jerks, when you do anything to make yourself sleep, it all will backfire. You'll have more hyperarousal, more hypnic jerks, more insomnia. It's all about like letting go of it. That is where you want to be, Z. That is where you want to go. That's the place you want to have as your destination. And now again, it's clearly psychological. That's fantastic. Again, I sit in the sofa, I listen to radio and SMR, fall asleep. That is, as long as I bring my blanket or anything that's associated with my bed, and that's a classic one with insomnia, right? We have when you have really trouble sleeping in your bed, and the bed kind of becomes conditioned with that. And as soon as you go to bed, you start feeling anxious, and it may seem like a good idea to then leave the bed so at least you get some sleep. But in reality, you're just reinforcing the fear of losing sleep. When you leave the bed and you sleep at least a little bit on the couch, you have trained your brain that lack of sleep is really to be avoided. It is dangerous. It is a threat. You have to do something to escape it. And whenever we try to escape a negative emotion, negative situation like this one, it becomes a bigger problem. So I think, as I've said a couple of times recently, I used to think that patience was the most important thing. I now believe it is courage, kind of the courage to stay in bed, the courage not to take that pill, the courage not to do anything, the courage to do something you enjoy when you can't sleep, as much as that's possible, at least something neutral, the courage not to do something to try to produce sleep. That is so important to get past it once and for all, and my current sleep window is this. I think, again, and this is something I understand more and more. If you go back a couple of months, I would say that maybe you can tweak the sleep windows, but now I believe no. Set it and forget it. Spend 7 hours in bed maybe, or 6.5, or 7.5. It doesn't really matter as long as you just stick to it. And whenever whenever you have trouble sleeping and you try to tweak something, it runs a real great risk of becoming another thing you track. Now, I tried this, that doesn't work. I tried this, it doesn't work. So I think set it and forget it. Don't tweak it. I think is definitely the thing. And so I think there's one more thing I want to ask, which is actually in light of the COVID situation, which is, and this applies to anything, but particularly with COVID. And let's use this model that I've been using more and more lately, which I think is really helpful. You would think that you are anxious because of COVID, right? Like, I'm so anxious because of this pandemic, but in reality, that is not the case. Emotions come from our thoughts. And so we think that I'm anxious because of COVID, but in reality, you're anxious because how you think about the circumstances. And by the way, there's nothing, wrong with that. As we talked about earlier, it's completely natural that you're anxious, and that results in, less sleep. But here's the but. For someone who really think that, my emotional reaction to what's happening is kind of excessive, then think about this. There are, all of us, like billions of people, are living on the same planet, going through the same thing right now. But we all have different emotions, in as a reaction to this, if you will. Meaning, some people are extremely worried. Some people say, well, it's actually not that bad, right? And that is, and again, like, it's the same circumstances, but a lot of people have different emotions. So you can work on your thoughts here, because the thoughts are really what causes emotions. The person that's not that worried is thinking, yeah, well, this is kind of like the flu with teeth. It's not that bad. And the person who's super anxious is like, oh my gosh, if this is the end of the world, I'm gonna die. So circumstances are the same, but if you really think your anxiety is excessive, you can work on your thoughts. You can try to go from a place of like, the COVID coronavirus is like super, super dangerous, and it can affect anyone at any time, to being like finding something that's more neutral. That would be something like, yes, there is a new strain of an old virus that's circulating, and it has affected a lot of people, but and then you can come up with a reason that you may not need to be that worried about it, and kind of like do that thought work that can help with anxiety as well. So I think big picture here is like, it's the same as virtually always say, is like, try to do less. Try to avoid doing anything with the intent to purpose of like suppressing anxiety, suppressing hyperarousal, suppressing hypnic jerks, and keep a sleep window, but set it and forget it. And if you can get to a point where you can even do things, more things for enjoyment, and that has nothing to do with sleep, that is really good. But I know it's super hard, but I hope this helps you. Stay in touch. You've gone to a point where you slept well before. You will do it again. Hang in there. Stay in touch, and thanks for commenting. So yeah, with that said, let's move along to a question that came in here from on Instagram, and this is from Alex, who has sent a couple of questions before. Let's read it. Hi, Daniel. I just want to give you an update. I'm about 16 days into sleep restriction, which means spending less time in bed. I notice I fall asleep relatively fast. My sleep duration seems to be a bit longer, around 5.5 hours. What concerns me is still the quality of it. I can't maintain sleep every day. I wake up pretty often, twice during the night. I fall back asleep either really quick or in 10 minutes. This affects my sleep quality, and I feel like I don't get much deep sleep. I also use a Fitbit band on my wrist, which shows weird heart spikes during the night. Tonight I had 118 heart rate a few minutes before I woke up during the night. Could it be some underlying health issue? I don't get any heart spikes during the day. I know it has been just 16 days of my restricted sleep schedule, but I'm really concerned about my sleep maintenance. I don't remember the last time I slept through the alarm. Thanks in advance. So Alex, first of all, thanks for staying in touch. And my thoughts when I read this is, well, first of all, for anyone out there, if you're concerned about your health, talk to your doctor. That said, I think the first thing that comes to mind is this one, that courage is probably the most important thing, as I just said, but patience is also important. And most people that start using CBTI, and by the way, I'm really going to try to emphasize here more and more how CBTI is much more than spending less time in bed. Yes, that is important, but understanding why you have trouble sleeping, understanding that sleep is a passive process, understanding that anything you do with intent of sleeping more is going to backfire. That is more important than spending less time in bed. And that's why I'm thinking that CBTI is good, but I think there are even better ways of approaching insomnia, I believe now, and that's what I'm working on, especially the self-coaching course that I'm setting up, where you will understand your mind and sleep. I think that's going to be super important. And my app, Bedtime with a Y, check it out, Bedtime. Go to bedtime.co and sign up to get notified. It's going to be out really soon if you're interested in that, if you think it will help you. But anyway, so I lost track of things there. Yeah, spending less time in bed helps, but it's even more important to understand why you have trouble sleeping, and patience too. Yes, it's typical that the first week is often like a nosedive, because when you change anything when it comes to your sleep, your brain, which is trying to tell you, like, you got to sleep, it's important to sleep, you got to do everything you can to sleep, and you're like, I'm going to spend less time in bed. It goes like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? You're crazy. This is not the way to go. You often have a nosedive the first couple of weeks, things get worse before it gets better. So the fact that you actually already are doing better is fantastic. That's amazing. And if you just keep going, better things will come to you. So kind of the first thing I think about when I read this was like, you're on the right track. Good things will come to you. Better quality sleep will come to you. More solid sleep will come to you as you go along. And then the other thing I want to comment on was attention. I know a lot of you heard me say this a million times, but it's so important. That person who sleeps really well does so because they're not giving their sleep any attention. They're not thinking about their sleep. They're not tracking it. They're not trying to figure out what's going on, etc. That's where you want to be. And that will come, that will of course come with better sleep. With better sleep, you will feel less need to pay attention, but there are things you can do actually that can help already now. And what I'm talking about is like, try not to know how much you slept. If you're keeping a diary, keeping track, you can just ask yourself, I think I slept this much, but avoid clocks. Don't try to track with a clock, because the more insomnia loves attention. The more you think about your sleep, track it, figure it out, etc., the more it appears like a problem, and the more insomnia you get. So trackers, I think, are really not helpful at all. I think tracking your time, tracking what time it is overnight is not helpful at all. So like letting go of that, I think can be really, really helpful. And I think that those were kind of the two big things that I said here. Yeah, I really think that trying to let go, like reduce attention, and just keep going, and you'll do fantastic, Alex. I really believe that you're early on here. Yeah, absolutely. And if you have any follow-up questions, just let me know, of course. And with that said, we have a question from Firas, and he wrote this in Swedish, so I'm gonna translate it so we can answer this. Hi Daniel, I've actually started with CBTI as per the plan you recommended. I didn't give any specific recommendations, but I think Firas talks about what I generally talk about here, how to spend less time in bed, etc. I actually started 2 weeks ago, just after I first contacted you. I slept about 6 hours. I've been spending about 6 hours in bed from midnight to about 6, or I slept from about midnight to 6 with some exceptions, but I was excited and I thought this is going to go really well. But 4 days ago, Ramadan started. I'm fasting, and I'm generally waking around 3 a.m. for the last meal before daybreak. After this, it was hard to fall back asleep. I got irritated and worried. And in addition to that, I'm kind of associating my bed with the type of anxiety I had when my little daughter was waking up 2 times per night. At that, I had to change the bed for the sofa. We heard that one before, right? And it does not feel good at all when I leave my wife and daughter and go to the living room to make it easier, so I get away from that emotion. I hope to give you a picture of my situation. I want to find a way to implement CBTI, maybe a little longer and not just 2 weeks. And also, I don't want to give up. Well, first of all, Firas, you're clearly not giving up. You're still here. You're asking me questions. That's amazing. So I think definitely you're on the right track. Again, pointing out positives here. There was a while there when you slept good, 6 hours, pretty solid sleep. That's fantastic. Again, that shows us you can sleep. There's nothing wrong with you. It is just some worry, preoccupation, habits, habitual things you do, habitual things you think that are in your way. Nothing else is in your way. Nothing else is in your way. And again, like we talked about when it came to Z, whenever something is different, maybe stressful, unusual, it can throw off our sleep, like waking up early for Ramadan. It's natural that will throw off your sleep. That is not again, that it's completely expected. As long as you don't react to it, as long as you don't start thinking, oh my gosh, something's wrong, I got to do something, you'll do fine. Things will go back to the way they were. And I want to say, this is an important one. Firas literally says, I'm leaving my bed to go to the living room to escape this emotion, so I don't have that emotion of like worry. And I think, again, it is this like, when you leave the bed and you go to the sofa, you feel kind of relieved. The sofa is not associated with trouble sleeping and worry, and you sleep a little bit more. But although that's great for 1 night or 2 nights, or meaning great, it feels better those times. In the long run, it is not a good idea, because you are reinforcing this thing that you need to escape the bed, right? I think. And by the way, it's good I can comment on that, which I didn't when it came to Z's comment there. It's nothing. I don't think it's anything wrong with leaving the bed if you're getting frustrated and annoyed in your bed. But I think it's better to go back to bed when you're feeling sleepy again. And even if like some nights you may be up a lot of time, you're still not getting into that habit of sleeping elsewhere. And creating this belief that you can't sleep in your own bed, which you then at some point will have to deal with, So I think that is important. Again, I think so again, to clarify that, nothing wrong with leaving the bed if you're in bed and you're frustrated, but when you feel sleepy again, then go back to bed, And by the way, this classic question that I feel I haven't talked about in a long time, which is people asking me, so if I leave the bed or wake up at night, what should I do? And the trick there is anything that is not an attempt to make yourself sleep. If you pick up a boring book or listen to like a boring podcast, guess what? You're trying to make yourself sleep, which backfires. So you should do something neutral, like doing some dishes, or I don't know, something like that, sorting some papers you need to sort, or something that's even enjoyable, reading a good book. And then people think, well, that's going to wake me up. Maybe it'll wake you up that night, maybe, or maybe it won't. But in the long run, if you do something that you enjoy when you wake up, you're not going to worry about waking up. If you can get to a point where you actually look forward to it, so you get a chance to read that book, guess what? You're not going to wake up anymore. It's the waking up is not a problem. It's the reaction to that is. It's when you wake up and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to wake again. What's going to happen? I'm not going to sleep again. That's the problem, not the waking up part. So I think just stick with your plan, Firas, and any more questions that come up, let me know. And you did well in the beginning. That means you're going to go well. As long as you don't give up, keep going. You are going to do amazingly well. Okay, cool. So we answered that one, and I think we are. Oh yeah. There was another email that just came in actually. Let's see, where are we? That was Firas, and oh yeah, here it is. Actually, this is from 2 days ago from Lorena. Hello, Daniel. First of all, everything, thank you for your awesome channel! ! ×3. Thank you, Lorena. This channel would be nothing without questions like yours, so I'm super grateful. The world needs more people like you. Thank you. My name is Lorena, and I have had insomnia for 6 years. I don't have problems falling asleep, but I always wake up in the middle of the night, and most of the time wake up too early as well. I'm on my 8th week of CBTI, and my sleep window is from midnight to 6. The first 2 weeks were very difficult, but after those first weeks, I started feeling that I had a lot of energy. However, in my 6th week, I came back to a point where I was feeling sleepy pretty much all day long, very annoying, even though I was having good sleep efficiency, 85 to 95%. So I decided to extend my bed restriction window by going to bed 50 minutes before. However, I just did it once because I woke up again in the middle of the night. After that, everything is just falling down. Now I came back to waking up in the middle of the night every night, and it's taken me a lot of time to go back to sleep. I almost feel like I came back to my days before starting the treatment, and I feel very sleepy and tired during the day. I don't want to think CBTI stopped working for me, but it's hard to keep motivated if I see my insomnia came back after almost 2 months during the treatment. Do you think it is normal, the fact that I have been following the treatment for 2 months, but I still haven't been able to make a longer sleep window? I'm really curious to know if someone has taken a lot of time until they truly gain confidence again and can make longer their sleep window. I would really appreciate your comments regarding my situation. Lorena, first of all, I want to say I get this email in some shape or form all the time. It is, in fact, we've seen an email from or comment from Z, who did well on CBTI and now, having some trouble with stress. Alex, Firas, very similar actually. And by the way, if you look back at the last Ask Daniel episode, I believe it was, we had someone, I believe it was named Richard, exactly like this, 8 weeks, just about to graduate a course and had a lot of kind of like trouble sleeping. So listen up for that one. I think it's very, very similar to this. Now, insomnia really happens, right? When part of your brain identifies the lack of sleep as a problem and nudges you to do something about it, right? And whenever there's a change, whenever we change something, then that part of your brain is like, what's going to happen now? Are you going to sleep now or not? We don't know. And this exactly what happened to you happens so many times. So if somebody's doing better, they're feeling kind of confident but still worried, and then decide, I'm going to spend a little more time in bed. And then that part of your brain goes like, but you changed something. How's that going to work? Maybe you'll sleep less. Maybe this can happen. And then guess what? Because of those thought patterns, you end up sleeping less. And then it seems to like confirm that was a bad idea. Then you go back, then you made another change. So now you made 2 changes. And now the brain is going like, why did you go back? Maybe you should have done it this way. And then you're back in that loop of like chasing your own tail. Like you're changing something, then you're seeing how it works, then you sleep less, then you're changing something else, then you change. etc., etc., etc. So whenever somebody is like doing the kind of traditional CBTI here, having a sleep window, and decides, you know what, I'm going to have a longer window now, I say just keep it at least for like 2-3 weeks before you consider changing it again. The mere thought of like maybe I should change it is so anxiety provoking. It's so important to do set it and forget it, to like, okay, if you decide I'm going to go to bed a little earlier, then make a decision and then stick with it. Like, no matter what happens, stick with it. When you make tweaks and changes, you're back in the rabbit hole. That's super important. And I think this email, Lorena, really makes me think of something I've been thinking about a lot for the past 2 weeks, which is, why is it that traditional CBTI isn't more effective? It is good. It is like, when you read papers on it, 70 to 80% success rate. Why isn't that 100%, or 99%? Why isn't that almost everyone does well? Because there's no reason not to, when you understand sleep and you understand how your mind works too. But even just understanding insomnia should take you to a place where it becomes really unlikely that you have it again. And that's where I think the problem with traditional CBTI is it's so focused on this bedtime restriction. It's so focused on like spending less time in bed, so you kind of force yourself to sleep and then kind of titrating it out. It implies that you can control sleep, which you cannot, and I think this is a real problem with traditional CBTI. And this implication that you can control sleep, I think, is super problematic, because then you're like, okay, I'm calculating your sleep efficiency. Now it's here. Now I should do this. And then you expect that to happen. Then it doesn't happen. Then you're like, oh my God, I can't control it. Everything is, So I think a much better approach is, yes, I think it's good to spend less time in bed, but I don't think that needs to be anything extreme. I think it's fine if you spend like even 7.5 hours in bed, or 7 or 6.5, something like that, and stick with it. And guess what? When you're sleeping really well and you've done that for several weeks, then it's not even going to be a question of like, should I add 15 minutes or like that? You're already having a, let's say, 7-hour sleep window. Yeah, it's not really much need to tweak it or change it, and you naturally kind of outgrow it. But that said, if you want to have a more kind of like a more structured way of graduating from a tight sleep window, I think this is really good. Let's say your sleep window is like midnight to 6, and you're like, I think I'm doing better. Then I think it's great to say, like, I'm going to stop checking the time 11. I'm going to stop checking the time 11 and just go by how I feel. If I feel I'm sleepy, I'm going to bed. If I feel alert, I'm not going to bed. And just don't check the time no matter what happens. I think that's a really good way to graduate from a sleep window. I think what's happening in your case, Lorena, super common, nothing unusual. And as long as you resist the urge to start, like, as long as you resist that urge to be like, what's wrong with me? What's going on? What can I do to change this? How should I choose this? Nothing. As long as you avoid that rabbit hole, stick with whatever sleep window you pick, and understand and like spend some time like really understanding insomnia on my channel or elsewhere, you'll do really, really well. You'll do fantastic. I think that was it, Lorena. Stay in touch. I appreciate all the support. I know you left so many super nice comments, and I looked up that place in Paris, by the way, where you're getting your CBTI. It looked really nice. All right, so with that said, we have one more email that I wanted to comment on, and it's one of those things again where I'm surprised we have not talked about this before. We're going to talk about short sleepers in a second. So we have a live comment from Ernest. Hey, Daniel, so sleeping hasn't been a problem anymore. Amazing. But more so, my girlfriend says I snore really loud. I do feel tired in the morning and all day. Should I check for sleep apnea? Okay. Another one that I was surprised, actually, I don't think I ever had this question here, but I want to say this. As always, medical advice, talk to your doctor, but I can give you my general thoughts on this one, which is, if someone is feeling tired and sleepy and is snoring a lot, I see no reason not to check for sleep apnea. And the thing that's good with sleep apnea is that if you don't have it, well, then that's not a culprit, right? If you have it, well, then treating it, which is generally with CPAP, which is kind of annoying but very effective, you get a very clear answer pretty soon. Like you start treating with CPAP and you're feeling much better, well, that was probably the culprit, and you should continue treating it. If you're not feeling any better, well, then maybe it wasn't the culprit. And in those scenarios when sleep isn't the culprit, I think this is a very important one. When sleep isn't the culprit, it isn't the culprit. Meaning, if you're feeling tired, fatigued, and you're not having sleep apnea, you don't have a sleep disorder, there's nothing obviously going on with your sleep, then it is actually important to think of other things, And classic things are like you are not in, some people need more exercise, and some people are like maybe not excited about something or whatever it is. Those could be other reasons. But we have seen so many times that when somebody's like, I'm not feeling refreshed during the day, there must be something wrong with my sleep, I got to do something about it. That can be a rabbit hole as well. So Ernest, I hope that helped, and I'm super happy you're not having any problem sleeping, and that you get to feel more energized and snore less, however that happens. Cool. So we are going to go to this other email that was a little bit different content than the usual one, and this is from Anne Jenkins, who I connected with 11 days ago first, and she wrote the following just today, actually a few minutes ago. I have finally figured out why I have not been able to sleep all of these years. I have short sleeper syndrome, which is sleeping just a short time. I have all the symptoms, and this fits me to a T. My husband, on the other hand, does not agree 100% this is me. Okay, this explains. I guess my husband, on the other hand, I don't know if he agrees 100% or not, but I think he does. This explains why nothing has ever worked all these years. I don't know how I fell into this, as I used to sleep 8, 10, or 12 hours a night, and then things abruptly changed. I'll be asking my natural holistic MD about it. I'm just glad I stumbled across this, and I'm very glad I finally found out what is causing this. I thought it was non-24. Blind people usually have this, but sighted people can have it too a few times. But I realized I don't have this, as I can go to bed very late and sleep only an hour or two, and then I'm back awake and struggle to sleep until it's time to get up. And there, she sent me some links. I don't know if you heard about this, and now that I know this, I can concentrate on trying some light therapy and other things. I'm glad that this is not insomnia, like I have been told all these years. So I think I read one of the links Anne sent, and I think this, which is, I'm going to find it 1 second. I wish I could find that place diagnosing. Oh, here it is. I found it. Those with natural sleep short syndrome don't require further testing, as they have no actual disorder. And the way, often I see patients in clinic that come in because they think they have insomnia, meaning they're like, I'm just sleeping like 5 hours. And I'm like, okay, well, how do you feel? They're like, I feel good. I have no problem. I feel energized. I have energy. But I'm only sleeping 5 hours, and I've been trying to sleep 8 hours, but it's not working. I can't do that. And then I'm like, well, guess what? You're a natural short sleeper. There's a spectrum. Like, some of us need a lot of sleep, some need little sleep, and there's a lot. There are people that are natural short sleepers who sleep very little. That's how I think about this. So I think it is not a disorder. It's just a natural. You're just on the short end of the spectrum, if you will. And I want to say, yeah, it is. I think for most people, like, how much we sleep is fairly constant over lifetimes. But again, if somebody's sleeping little but feeling amazing, that means you're a natural short sleeper. At least now you are. There's nothing wrong with that. And I want to say, though, like, I found sometimes it's very reassuring, and it feels really good when you you found something that explains everything. And if, for example, if somebody realizes I'm a natural short sleeper, and then don't try to sleep more, and sleep a little time but feel good, that's perfect. And if this is what happens to you, nothing would make me more happy. But on the flip side, if somebody says, oh, I realized I was lacking in magnesium and I'm taking magnesium and sleeping well now, if that person sleeps well for the rest of their lives, that's fantastic. But there is also but I would say to that person, it's like, if you thought you were low on magnesium and now you're taking magnesium, and like a couple of weeks later or a month later, something like that, that person's like, now I'm not sleeping well again, then I would say, maybe you have insomnia, maybe it is your thoughts and habits and etc. That is the culprit after all. So anyway, I think yeah, that's it. And I hope you sleep well for the rest of your life, and stay in touch and let us know how you do. And it's always good to hear success stories. So I'm excited to have one of those if you sleep really well going forward. All right. So with that said, how are we on time? I think we will conclude there, actually. And I will thanks Ernest, thanks everyone for sending questions, and I will be back on Monday. So take care and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.